All right, well, Larry, are you ready to kick this off? Should we do it?
I think we should do it. We're ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, hello, everybody. We are so excited. Today, it is a very special interview with the one and only founder and CEO of American Solutions for Business, Larry Zavadil. So, American was actually founded on this day, so February 17th, 1981, exactly 40 years ago. We're so excited to have you today, Larry. Does it seem a little surreal?
Oh no, see, it seems crazy, right? See, yeah, no, we never had any plans to be here today. You know,
Wait, you
back,
didn't?
no, it just happened. God's been good to us. We've been blessed and survived, right? I always say when you have birthdays, they say, "Oh, congratulations on being whatever," and say, I didn't really do anything. I just didn't die. Now, it's a lot different for American, the company, and we've evolved and we've survived.
And
Yes.
we're thriving. Yes, we're
Yeah.
so excited for it. We definitely are. So, many of us who are tuning in have heard some version of the American story one way or the other. And even though we're going to dive into a lot of questions with you today, first, can you give us a little background for how American came to be?
Well, again, it was kind of like a lot of the sales associates that have joined American is that you come to a time in your life, your career, where you have to make a decision. You come to that point where, you don't like where you're at. You know that you want to do something different and you want to control your destiny and you want to create value. So you look at what your plan B is, so where do I go? And so that's really how we started. I went to the University of Minnesota. I grew up on a farm 5 miles north of town here in north of Glenwood. And when I went to Minneapolis, when I graduated, I went to work for NCR and I sold print and supplies for a year and a half. And then I moved back out here and did a pizza place and a bar and sold auto parts and sold produce. And then in 76, NCR came out and said, well, we want to open up and give you North Dakota and 2/3 of Minnesota. So I went back in 76 and started selling print and supplies again. Um, just chasing orders to fit NCR steel. And it was fine at NCR and all the major companies in those days. They trained us really well. But I always said that, we were overpaid the first few years when we were being trained. And after that, we were underpaid the rest of our lives. And so everybody kind of made a decision to move on. And that's how our industry kind of evolved to the distributor side. But at that time, I kept coming back and because I was traveling and I'd come back at night and then or the weekend until Diane says, there's got to be a better way. I'm going past all these people that are buying all kinds of stuff, and we don't sell it. And so I'm tired of saying no, at NCR, they say, hey, can you do this? And, oh, no, we don't do that. And I said, I want to say yes. I want to say, yes, I can. I want to be that employee without being on the customer's payroll. And I want to give them solutions and ideas because they're going to buy this stuff from somebody. And that day there was no internet. It was catalogs, telemarketing, and a few salespeople out beating the bushes. And so that's how it all started. And I talked about it for 3 years. It would have been probably starting in 78. And I came back in 76. And I said, God, if I could just work with, sell everything to everybody, I could work within 100 miles of Glenwood and I could do really, really well. And so I kept coming home and saying it. And the aha moment, which is the key to everybody's decision, was in October of 80 when my wife Diane said, this thing you talk about all the time, you either do it or shut up and don't talk about it ever again. Now, she said, I didn't say shut up, but I said it tells us the story goes much better if I use that. She probably said, be quiet, right? So I'm just sick of it. I don't want to hear about it, right? So then I said, well, okay. So I went to Schwann Sales, my biggest customer, and said, you buy from me or do you buy from NCR? Well, we buy from you. Well, if I can give you the same or better product, same or better pricing, and I can still work in Glenwood and my kids can grow up like I did in a small town and have that experience, would that be good? And they said, hey, good for you, good for us. And so that's how it started. And I went down to Adam's sales book and got a price on the route books for their ice cream trucks. And I saved them a dime a book, and that was in December of '80. And so then we went out after I got the order and had a couple beers with the three guys I worked with there. And they said, well, what do you call this thing? And I said, don't call it Zavadil Business Forums, because you need a company name that's bigger than who you are so you can grow into it. And I says, this is about, I'm living the American dream. This is about our country. It's about the entrepreneurship. And I said, it's red, white, and blue all over. I said, we're going to be red, white, and blue. We're going to have the flag, and so it's going to be American Business Forums, Inc., which is still our legal name today, or technically, although we use DBAs in a lot of cases. But I said on the back of the card, I'll have a picture of my mom, Chevrolet, and an apple pie. And so I always say that's after the second beer. But then the next day, I called the guys up and said, forget about the backer, but we are American Business Forums, Inc. We're going to be red, white, and blue, and we're moving forward. So that's how our name happened, our legal name in the beginning. But I kind of never used it because it wasn't just about business forums. We did a lot of other things, but that was just a natural. And they said, don't use the Zavadil Business Forums because shit, nobody can say it. So that whole thing evolved, and so it's been a lot of that dumb luck, as you say, or osmosis. And we always talk about evolution and how we're an amoeba and we keep changing. And that's what made our model so unique. And I always say it wasn't a big plan. The bank made me do a 5-year plan, but in 6 months we were way past it, and I never made another one. I always say, people say, well, where are you going to be 10 years from now? I said, well, now I said, hopefully I'm still going to be alive. But I said, really, 10 years from now, our customers will drag us kicking and screaming into the future if we just ask the right questions. I said, you got to do the Columbo routine, which is the way I did it. I was ask a lot of questions and downplayed my role, didn't look super successful so that they didn't feel I was overcharging them. And so that everybody's got to find that skin or that story or that the way that they feel comfortable in telling the story. So anyway, when I told Gary Skordal and Dan McAnally, the first two guys I worked with them at NCR, told them what I was going to do. Well, we want to do that. I say, well, I don't want to manage you. So what ended up happening is we looked around, and I looked at all the other models in the industry. I looked at franchises. Well, they did some things good, but there were a lot of things I didn't want anything to do with. I didn't feel like that's where I wanted to go. I already knew what the majors offered. And then I looked at distributorships. Well, heck, we're all kind of the same. Most distributorships got into business because the owner had a good account, like I did, Schwann's, which was half of our business. And they needed tools and they need resources in that back room of banker, lawyer, accountant, technology type of support. And they leveraged that to bring in other people to hopefully, help them pay for it. And so that's normally how all these distributors happen. And some were bigger and some were smaller, but they all seem to get to a certain level and not go any further. And I said, God, they all replicate, and they're all paying for that back room stuff over and over and over. And so most of the splits were 50-50. So I said, hey, we got to find a better way where we can have all those tools to compete with the big guys. Because more business forums, we call it Mother More, was number one then. And it's like IBM was 1BM to NCR. So anyhow, these are our competitors. We got to be able to be in the marketplace. And we need volume and we need buying power. So the more volume we have, the more vendors we can participate with and keep happy, but also open that avenue to sources of supply. So that's how, with Dan and Gary, and so we kicked it around. I said, that's how we started, saying that, we needed that help. Now, Gary was on our board today, and he retired a couple years ago, and I always jokingly told him, he had the shortest resume in our industry because he graduated a year at NCR, American, rest of his life, So, and Dan, he was at NCR, he came over. Now he does most of his stuff at Diversity with his biggest account. And that was another thing, is that we've evolved and gotten into that amoeba stage where in '92, we had a bunch of customers that said, hey, we really like buying from American and saving this money and all the tools and things you give us, but we need it as a diversity. And so that's when we started diversity, and my wife Diane owns, and it's a total separate company, but it gives that option of solutions to all our salespeople, where if that's what the customer needs, we got a solution for it. So even today, if you want to go to your customer and say, you know, I'm not going to tell you how you're going to buy from Larry and American, but how would you like to? What's that source of pain? What are those time wasters? What are those things that nobody can get right? You can't get it off your desk. That's what I want to look at, because if I can solve the hard stuff, anybody can do vanilla. And so the same thing is with the home office. I tell everybody that never say no. The most negative you can be is, you know, we've never done that before. I'm not sure. Let me check. And make it a maybe. Because 9 times out of 10, when you really dig into all the stuff we do today, now 40 years later, we probably are doing a solution that you're not even aware of, because there's so much you could do, you know, from day one in 1981. I always told our people, I said, communication is the most difficult thing that we'll have to deal with. And that's whether it's at home or in politics, or it's in our life in general, or a business. Communication is the hardest thing. And so American, as we've evolved, we've got a lot of successes. We've got a lot of great stories and great things that happen, but how do we share that? You know, how do we do it? You know, with Taylor, when you came on board, and, you know, our social media and marketing team, and you've done an awesome job that we didn't have for 30 years. And we've been just getting better and better at it, and we know how to use the tools. But even with that, all the people in the field, they get busy being busy. When you're busy being busy, you can't do everything. And so you kind of store that stuff away. And that's what I always tell people. You can't know everything, and you can't know everything, and you can't learn everything. All you have to know is, where can I find it? And of course, today, even a non-tech person like me figured it out. You Google it. So there's always a way to figure it out, right? But within American, within American, you got to go to our website, the associate section, and there's so much that we do and have that we're trying to get out there and share, because even I don't use all the tools, and I say, God, that's a good idea. We really have something cool there, right? So,
but Larry, you are so adaptive, though. I mean, everything that you just said, there are so many lessons that we can unpack, and I do want to jump in and ask some very specific questions, because I have to say, I mean, you have adapted incredibly well over the last year. You record all of your own videos, you jump on the Zooms with, you know, no problem at all. And that's really kind of, it goes back to that ambition, the ability to kind of change on a dime and take risks. I do have to ask, though, in the very beginning, were you ever concerned about, you know, feeling confident in taking those risks? And, you know, how did you kind of get over the fear of those risks?
Well, I guess you know, the biggest one is you couldn't fail. I mean, once you left, all of my competitors are saying, "Oh yeah, he'll do really well, make all this money, then he'll get out of the industry and he'll be buying from me again." And so I had one guy that I competed against in Alexandria playing football, and he was the head of the hospital, and we're sitting across the desk, and he told me that story. And I've been trying to get that account away from more business owners, because they were a GPO endorsed vendor and we weren't. And so I said, you know, I've been calling you for 4 years, and I've been doing your forms management and checking and stuff, but yet you give the orders more. Well, he told me, and then he told that story about, well, Larry's going to be successful, and he's going to get out of the business, take all his money, and then you're going to be buying from me again. I said, Bill, I said, I'll make a promise to you. He said, I'll be on this side of the desk as long as you're on that side. And that's how that one started. And lo and behold, he retired about 5-6 years ago, and I'm still chucking away. So, you know, but those kind of things are the way that you kind of got into those situations, and you had to, you really had to make them feel confident that, yeah, that was a relationship that was going to live and that they really wanted. So that's tell people, hey, we're not paper pushers or promo pushers or whatever. We're solutions providers. We're marketing people. We're there to offer a solution and help. We're here to serve because they're going to buy from somebody. Why not find a path of least resistance to buy from a friend? Because I said, you see me coming through the door and take my hat off because I'm an outsider saying, oh shit, here comes Larry again. You got to tell me because life's too short. You know, we've got a lot of people that I could bring in here that maybe you build that relationship with because it's all about relationships. And so it's more fun working with people that you love picking the phone up and talking to or getting the phone call from, because in our world now, if you really embrace the distributor marketing and our model, you can find a solution and a yes answer and solve anything for them if you dig hard enough. You just got to be ambitious enough to serve that customer and their needs so they can go back to work and do their job, because of all the stuff that they buy, that's not, most cases, is not their job. They got other things to do. And so we become that assistant, that helpful. But yeah, way back in the beginning, we were fighting the struggle financially. You know, there was a time I had 8 credit cards maxed out. I went through all those cycles. So when I talk to owners today, or people that are been in the business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, I say, I know what you're living because I've lived that. I've been at that small level. I've been at that tapped out thing. I've been at that trying to find a bank or a lender to deal with. I lived through all that. So I said, I know I can feel your pain. I know what you're dealing with. But collectively, and I've always said this, that we can do more together than we can apart. So if we can get together, 2 people working together with the same focus, can make things work. And nobody keeps 100% of the gross profit. So if you go out, you always have a cost of doing business. And so I say, you know, if you go out and say, oh, I don't need the American because I got the bank. The bank is not a big partner. You know, they gave you some money, but they're not helping you with solutions or help you grow. So.
Right. And Larry, this does kind of fall into another question that I have. I mean, as you're explaining the American story, I mean, really, I think we can all agree that Diane is to thank for American Solutions for Business. I mean, really pulling that trigger. And I mean, you have this wonderful family support system around you. You talked about, you know, Dan and Gary in the early days. You're talking about the collective group of us is more powerful than anybody could be individually. How can we ensure that we're always surrounding ourselves with the right people to grow? How do you determine that? How do you ensure that for yourself?
I think we still got to focus as a company and as individuals on people and looking at those, you know, relationships. When somebody comes in, is that, you know, Diane would tell me, will you bring anybody on board? I says, well, it's kind of like our country. You know, a lot of the things that American does is kind of like we are as America, in letting people come in, until we didn't let immigrants come in. But people would come in, you know, it just like come into America, and we'd give them all a chance and say, wait, you know, you got a year and 18 months. If it's not working out, we'll call you and say, you know, this really isn't working out. We're not adding value. And so maybe you should look at something else. And some of them are a little more aggressive than that, but they're not working out. But you got to trust and try. You're never going to be right all the time. It's like picking stocks or anything. You got to be able to keep moving forward, but never say no and never shut people out. You got to give it a try and keep evolving. And so that's what I look at, is that how can we, everybody's got value. Somebody, you know, they all do something well and they all have value. Well, how can we leverage that? How do we figure out, how do we do that and put them in a place where, like we say now, is that live that American dream? Because we tell people today is we really want to know what your vision and what your dream is. What's your American dream? Because once we know that, our job as a company is to find out ways that we can assist that, add value, and get there, because that's Americans' model. We invest in people and technology, and really is to create solutions. We don't make, sell, or own anything. We facilitate. And Americans evolve into the greatest facilitator. And then probably the best, or part of the way to tell the story is that over the years we've evolved, and the company is really a 3-legged stool. You know, first was that faith that, you know what, we could build a better model. We could build a model where people could control their destiny, build value for themselves and their family, and pay a little bit of the GP to the infrastructure, rather than having to do it all themselves and replace it and do like everybody else has done. And so collectively, we could have a bigger infrastructure, more tools, and stronger than each one of us doing it on our own. And so kind of going back to that faith that if we could put that together and survive and show, because everybody told me, well, you can't do that. You can't pay that kind of a split to salespeople and survive, whatever. But they weren't thinking the way our model was. Because it's kind of like today, everybody said, well, we know who you are, but no, they don't. Well, you look like a franchise. Well, there are some things that we do because they had some good things that we kept. I always said that I see something good out there, I'm going to copy it because I'm not smart enough to figure all this stuff out. But there's a lot of people that got good ideas that we could use and we could fold in, and it makes sense for what we're trying to get to. But on that faith is that if I could build that model where people could survive and be better off than on their own or somewhere else, and they really wanted to make a change, I had that was my faith that if I could build that, then my hope was, my second leg is a hope that people would really listen. And then we could live long enough to survive and show that, yes, we can do this. Until we got to be $15 million, my $1.5 million had to subsidize and push the company and run the company. I could see that tipping point where our model, once we got over 15 million in volume, it started to change where our splits did work and our model did work. And we could be more aggressive in doing things. So like today, we become a company of first, we talk about, because we're the only one that has a self-funded insurance program that even covers sales there. So everything that happens in your business world, nobody's got that. And so we've been able to adapt and evolve and bring more things. So that was my hope, that people would, okay, buy in and understand and get there. And then, of course, the last leg is love. And I said what that stands for is really forgiveness, is working together, knowing that, because Diane's from a family of 12, she's in the middle. They're not all equally together as far as individuals or siblings. I only have a family of 4, so Tammy works with Americans, so she knows that it's a lot easier, but she's 15, 16 years younger than me. So it's like it's big separation is still different. But the thing that American is just like these family units, in that sometimes you get to a point where you have to talk it out, and if you can't find a win-win solution or a way to resolve it, normally you say time out and say we agree to disagree. Let's move on, and you go to the next thing. And so that's the forgiveness part, where you say, you know what, we're still all better off where we're at, but you and I just don't agree on that. And so I think that that's a part, that acceptance. And so, yeah, it's really in a simple, version of my three-legged stool that really, I think, embodies or embraces who we are and our model and where we're going.
Definitely. And the fact that we're, employee owned, we're very, relationship focused. We want this to be a good place where people can work and really feel their impact. It all just really ties together with that philosophy that you have. I guess. But
that again, that was a stroke too. And I said,
yeah.
never underestimate the power of dumb luck. And that is, we've been very lucky, but it hasn't always been shits and giggles, as they say. Right. There's been a lot of challenges. There've been a lot of times where we've had to fight our way through things, where we outgrew our bank and go, in a small ag bank in the beginning, and we had to find an asset-based lender. So we kind of grew through and went through all these doors, as Schwann said, this because they were 60 million when I started with them. Now they're 3 billion, and they always talked about these doors you travel through as a company and make changes and evolve. And that really does happen. You kind of go through these different crises as you're growing in volume and getting these points. And so being able to survive those by the grace of God and being able to get through it, that is what gives you the stripes and kind of the learning part of the past. Because when Dusty Dupree was passed away with cancer, and Dave Coronito died at a small plane crash in 1999, that got me to the point. It says, we really need to, or 2000, it was early 2000 maybe, because Dusty was around when we were talking about the ESOP. But when that happened, I said, if that would have been me, we'd have been selling the company to pay taxes. So that's what really pushed us into the ESOP, which is a stroke. It's the best model to survive. It's the best model to preserve our model in our little Mayberry here in Glenwood, along with being technology allowing us to be virtual. Those things have all come about and come together. So if you took our model and tried to make it happen back in the 50s or 60s, wouldn't happen. We didn't. It's again, it's by the grace of God and things happening. But I always say, if you do the right things for the right reasons, what goes around comes around, and things happen. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yes,
And
I
so,
love that quote. I was actually going to bring that up, and Larry, you kind of allude to this. One of my favorite questions. It's this podcast called How I Built This. It's an NPR podcast, but they always ask the entrepreneur how much of success is based on luck and how much is hard work.
well, I think you have to have a belief. You have to like what you do, and you have to have that belief and that faith that you're not going to give it up. This is what I want to do, and I like doing it. And so once you have that vision and that feeling, then it's just a matter of dealing with things. And so I always say that, there's always negative. So you want to define the negative and deal with the negative and try to make it go away. And then, but you dwell on the positive, because the positive is what keeps you going and is what's worked. So what works? What's working? What do you have to be positive? That's what you focus on, the positive. Deal with the negative because you have to, but don't let it consume you. And that's what happens to so many people, is that the negative gets so heavy that they can't focus any positive, and it overwhelms them. And so it's always hard. How do you take that mentally and pull away from it? Because I always said that all the years when I was on the road working, and Diane raised the kids and took care of all the house and everything, and did an awesome job. Fact is, she took care of the pizza place. She worked as a X-ray tech in 3 different hospitals, and she raised the 3 kids. So I think she had the harder job than I did. But anyhow,
And she's president of American Diversity too, right? Or she's CEO. I'm sorry.
Yeah, now she
Right,
is.
right.
Yeah. She said, as she tells the story, well, another thing you made me do, but we had a customer need and we had a solution, and that's how we worked it out, so that it was legitimate. It wasn't just a shell thing like a lot of our competitors. But
Right.
yeah.
And Larry, I do want to jump in too, because you're hitting on something that I think is really impactful for a lot of people who are maybe in a sales role or sales support role, or just, business in general. What sort of characteristics do you need to be a good salesperson or to be a good business person? What traits do you have to have? Are you born with it? Do you learn it? What are your thoughts?
Well, over the years, we looked at, from even when Rose Verning at that time, we hired her. She was selling radio and TV advertising, and back in the 80s, and we brought her into the industry. And I said, well, really, what we look at is, I think even today, when we look at new people getting started, you have to be a people person. You have to have a people personality. You got to like to deal with people, because that's all we do. Try to build relationship. Now I know with COVID and all of the tools and the young people getting into purchasing, they want to do things through technology and not see you, because we used to do the old milk route where we went around and saw people. But even that's loosening it up a little bit until COVID hit, where we had to go back to Zoom and team meetings. But that will change again too. People still need people, and ultimately you see that coming back. So you need to have a people personality. The other thing is, you got to be able to get up and work. You got to be able to do it on your own, because everything begins and ends with the face in the mirror. You got to be able to plan your work your plan, and just stick to it. And that's the structure. Other than that, we can find tools. You learn by doing, and that's like I started that. Customer would say, well, can you do this? And I said, let me figure it out. And I'd go back and find it, because there was people back in NCR's office that were older than I was. They knew what to do. I'd bring back the solution. So I could, that's one of the things. When you're brand new, you don't try to lie to the customer or try to smooth it over like you know something. just go in and say, hey, I just started, this is what I'm doing, but you know what? I really like the opportunity to give you and serve you and give you solutions. And so all this stuff. And then I found too, that's why I started selling supplies right away, because that's the way you could start that relationship with the customer. They would buy toner, ribbons, paper, whatever, office supplies, what have you, all those things, because they're just something they got to get done and get it off their table. So little risk, because if it didn't work out, they give it back to you and they buy from somebody else. So anyway, that's how you get that invoice in the customer system. Now you're a vendor and you get the second one because they buy this stuff weekly or monthly or whatever. Pretty soon, that cycle of having to wait a year and a half to do a custom job gets cut down to 6 months because you've been around and you're in the system, and they forget that you haven't been there a year and a half.
Sure.
So I think those are the basic simple stuff.
Yeah, and it's great to hear kind of some reassurance that, it doesn't have to be this born set of traits that we can kind of grow and develop. I do want to kind of touch on something that you mentioned. This has been a very transformative year for all of us. And, whether it's kind of moving more toward that technology side or just kind of evolving, sometimes it feels like on warp speed. What makes you hopeful for the future? What are you looking forward to?
Well, it's just that the world's not going to end. And so somebody's going to buy something from somebody. And so I think that's the thing, is for us to evolve as a company, because I said, that down the road, I don't know what we're going to sell, if it's widgets or whatever, but it isn't going to be the stuff we do today, because if you look at, before the virus, we didn't know PPE, and now we have a whole vertical that focuses on it. And that's not going to go away. It's going to morph. It's going to be a different, different products or a different way, but it's never going to go away. There's still going to be that discussion of somehow using it. And so anyhow, you look at, there's always going to be a new thing that's going to come down. So although a lot of things get evolved and their old ideas have become a new idea, I think that's the biggest thing, is listening to your customer and letting them drag you. Don't get creative and try to you can think outside the box and you kind of try to anticipate, but you can't get very far ahead, because if your customer doesn't want to be there, you're way out here and they aren't going to buy it anyway. So might as well get in the same page as them and find out what do they want. And so that's really our business as a salesperson in our stuff. Now, if you're a different career or a different vocation, it's a whole different channel. But if you want to be a salesperson and you want to do what we do, you just ask a lot of questions and be Columbo.
Right. Yeah, curiosity and adaptability for sure. So at this point, I do want to open up the floor a little bit to any of our webinar attendees. If you guys have any questions for Larry, at this time, feel free to drop it into the Q&A session, or the Q&A button, or the chat button, and we can kind of go through and we'll ask Larry a few of those questions. But Larry, in the meantime, can you define what is success to you? How do you determine if something is successful, if you are successful?
It's a hard question. I used to always say that, when I was traveling around doing things, is that, you had these balls in the air that you're juggling, trying to get things done and do things. And I said, when everything's going really well at work, they're about ready to blow up at home. And when everything was going really well at home, they were going to blow up at work. So I think that's what everybody's struggling and trying to do, multiple things and keep everybody happy. But I think that's the thing, is just to focus on the day-to-day and try to do all those simple things. Do the right thing. Do the right thing for the right reasons. Try to add value. Try to be patient, and try to just be the kind of person you would like to meet. There's somebody that you would like to work with. Yeah. So again, it gets back to relationships, and yeah, it's a challenge, and nothing's perfect. It's like not everybody stayed with American over the 40 years. Some have left, some have come back, and some that have left, they thought they were going to find utopia. And I said, well, God love you. If you can find utopia, give me a phone call. And in 40 years, nobody's called me. So there is no utopia.
Oh, well, Larry, I do want to jump in here because we have some great questions from the audience. The first one from Heather Rausch, this is a really great one. Did you foresee your kids getting involved with ASB back in the early days? Now that Justin is such a huge part of our leadership team, what is that dynamic like?
Well, I think that in the very beginning, that was always kind of the natural thing to think about. But the kids really were not here. They were, they had their own thing. Even Justin was down in Minneapolis and doing his thing. And we looked at family-owned businesses, and I always jokingly tell the stories that I always saw the family businesses, and the founder gets it, the first generation gets it, but all the people after that, they don't get it because they don't know the blood and sweat that, that went into it. And so I always say, well, like Willow, Justin's daughter, well, she doesn't get it. You always have to, well, yeah, but she's only 5, And so but that as it evolved and stuff, because they would all get to a certain level, and then, the later generations just disbanded the company. They didn't have the desire. So but it was a stroke in 2006 when Justin came back and helped me with the vendor side of it, and we were trying to do more to reach out to our vendor partners and to communicate with them. And so he came back to do that. And as it evolved, he's a lot like me. He's got he understands, grew up in the business like his brother Josh and Jessica, being around this stuff. But Josh and Justin, they used to work with Raleigh Wold and all the buildings and maintenance in the summertime. And so they knew the business. And so when he came back, and he liked sales, and because he understood everything, and he really embraced the industry, because he would go out to visit with vendors and did more than I. I said that I was focused always on sales, recruiting, and customers, and not so much on vendor relations or even our industry, because I thought, I'm not a friendly competitor. And so to go to industry meetings, you have to be nice to your competitors. and we'd go there, and I remember when Precept and the other one was still alive, before they went bankrupt, they'd all be sitting around these round tables trying to talk about how they could screw the salesperson, and take money away and change commissions and whatever. And I just look at, you guys are crazy. I want your salespeople. I don't care about you guys. So that
you just want to stay in your lane and grow American to be the best that it possibly can be. Well, so Larry, another question
But Justin coming back and wanting to do it. And he's done a great job building, and this is the best senior leadership team that we've had in 40 years. And part of it is we're bigger. We have more resources to hire good people and pay more money to them. Where in the early days, bringing somebody back to Glenwood to live and whatever wasn't the ideal career path, and we struggled to be able to pay the market rate for somebody. But now today, even with COVID, people are coming out here and working remote, right? And so they want to live in a rural area. They're getting out of the big city. So I think that changed things for our model to be successful and evolve out here. And really, we were looking at finding new places to have customer service support in St. Cloud when Sam Triplett was alive, and in Moorhead, because we were running out of people. We couldn't, within 40 miles of Glenwood, that was our resource. And so being able to go virtual and using things remotely, which we started years ago, that really put us in a position. So when COVID hit, going virtual for everybody else in home office in a couple of days was just equipment.
Right. Oh, that's a great point. Great point. I'm glad you
but
added that for sure.
I feel very confident in America's future with Justin and the senior leadership team.
Definitely. Another question here. So Carrie Longmire wants to know, how do you always have such a positive attitude?
Because I go home and Diane always beats me up. So I say, yeah, I used to joke about it. I said, yeah, whenever I start feeling good about myself, I just go home. So she'll
She
always
keeps
tell
you
me,
grounded. Yeah,
yeah,
she keeps you grounded. I love that.
she'll
Love
always
that.
tell me, you know what, no, all your videos and all that stuff, you just do it because you love yourself. And I said, no, but
Oh, we love you, Larry. No, it's always great to have that balance though. You need that in your life. I think we all need to have that healthy balance just to keep us focused and on track. I do have a fun question. So Ryan Olson chimed in. He wants to know your favorite plant that you grow in your garden because you are a big gardener.
well, my raspberries are good, and then I've got 20 grapevines that
Mm.
I struggle with, in that they kind of freeze out and then they come back. And so I think the best crop we had, I had 4 or 5 gallon buckets of grapes that we squeezed and made grape juice and grape jelly or jam. But last year I only got 4 quarts, so that's I'm not a very good vineyard guy or whatever. But we get a ton of raspberries. But those are the kind of things that are simple. Raspberries keep coming back, so I don't have to have a big green thumb.
Oh, that's awesome. What a fun question. Yeah, if anybody has personal questions, those ones are fun too. So Roger Remo, one of our vendors on Facebook, just asked, 40 years is an amazing accomplishment. What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm just proud of all the people that are with the American family. The fact that we've been able to get the family feeling, and with the ESOP being the crowning touch, um, I just I just feel that we've been very, very blessed, and that there's no other way to say it, and that God's been good to us. And I always tell everybody, I don't care who your God is or what religion is. Everybody's got a belief. Everybody's got a faith. And they've got something. Even an atheist has a belief. And so you just got to keep that faith and keep moving forward and keep that belief. So whatever it is, we just say, may that bless you and take care of you and your family, because that's kind of the glue that holds your things together so you move forward. Then again, it's hard to say, but it is true that if you work hard, good things happen. Because odds are, if you're working hard and you got good faith and what you have those principles of what goes around comes around, you get what you give. Well, not always. Sometimes you give good, and you don't always get good back, but you don't stop doing it. You just keep doing it. So it's those little simple things. And I always tell them, my dad was a farmer. Best years he ever had, he made 15 grand. And that was the years when Paul Harmon Killebrew, the baseball player, was making 150. Yeah? And and Vern Gagne was making 150 wrestling. So, I mean, that was big bucks, right? And so when I went to work for NCR, we made 6,700 a year, right? And so things have evolved, but I look back at that and I says, I was born broke and naked. I'm going to go out of this broken naked. I can't take anything with me, right? So,
Right.
so the end of the day is it's a journey and it's a trip, and so not all good things happen. We've had to deal with a lot of negative, throughout the course of time, but we survived, and we survived because we took care of our vendor partners. We took care of our customers and our salespeople, and that's what kept us together when we had tough times. Is that belief that in each other. And so that's that faith and that hope and love, the three-legged stool again. It always kind of comes around, right? So I think I'm most proud of the fact that we survived and continue to evolve our amoeba model into even a better model going forward, so that the next generation under the ESOP, now we will be the last company standing, because we're not going to go away. And the next generation will keep evolving it as they keep that same belief and that same faith. They'll make it happen.
Sure, and that's a great segue into one of our questions from the audience too. So Joel wants to know, Larry, what is your wish for the next 40 years to the American family?
Well, I'd say just continue doing what we're doing, don't lose faith and don't lose our way. So I just say stick to our knitting. I say just do what you do best. I go to the manufacturers that have sales forces, and I said, never met a manufacturer that likes salespeople because it's like herding cats, right? And so it's a necessary evil. So why don't you let us take over your sales side? We'll find a way to incentivize people to buy from you, and you become one of our Patriot level vendors and do what you do best. Stick to your knitting. So I think we have to do the same thing.
It might be like herding cats, but we really like our cats. So
Right.
that's a great model.
That's our job. Our job is herding cats, and that's what we do.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Well, so Frank Sklavenitis has another fun question for you, Larry. So as a Big Ten fan, how do you think the Golden Gophers will fare against Fighting Illini this Saturday?
Right now, I am not a big Gopher basketball fan. I'm very disappointed. So we get our hopes up and faith up, and so but I think a lot of times we underachieve. So it's hard. If we play at home for some reason this year, we can have a lot of faith. But yeah, but we keep buying tickets, and Diane keeps reminding me when I get negative, saying you're the one that buys all the tickets. So,
It kind of sounds like you being a fan for the Gophers is representative of, how you're always rooting for American. You're always going to show up to the games. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but that's awesome. All right, well, let's see here. Oh, somebody just asked who's your favorite Michigan sales rep. Don't lean into that one, Larry. Oh, that's great. Well, you guys, I think that this is a wonderful chance for us to wrap up this interview. Larry, before we kind of close up with some housekeeping topics for this week, do you have any final thoughts for everybody tuning in?
No, I just want to thank everybody for being part of the American family and continuing our quest, because together we can keep making an impact and trying to make everybody's life better. And we can keep evolving and not so much to make an impact in the industry, but we can show the way to a better way. And hopefully other people will find it and follow in their own way. But I think that's just it, is trying to just keep moving forward and trying to make today a great day and tomorrow better. But thank God we're not in Texas. Our daughter in Houston is talking about no power for 3 days and 32 degrees below in our house. And God, you guys beat us. Yeah, you're always bitching about Minnesota, and now, God, you want to be up here, right?
Winter wonderland everywhere. Yeah.
What goes around comes around, right?
Oh, that's great. Well, Larry, thank you so much for all of the insight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I think it's time to now turn it over to some of our housekeeping items that we were talking about, though, which is our 40th anniversary celebration. Larry, I think you have your hand fans in front of you, don't you?
Yay!
Oh, man. So everybody who is part of the American family received a set of hand fans. So it has Larry's face on it. It has cheers. It has, oh, yeah, there we go.
We got them all.
We have them all. So you guys, this week and, in the coming weeks, feel free to take some selfies, take videos, get super creative. We did include Larry's head in there so everybody can take a selfie with Larry. I know that we're all remote, but this is a fun way to connect everybody. So share on social media. We have a few different internal ways that you can share as well. And then surprise number 2, watch your inbox for an email. We are launching a special 40th anniversary pop-up shop where you can redeem your free t-shirt and your free koozie. And then you can also shop from a limited edition collection of 40th anniversary swag. It's all very retro inspired. And then all of the proceeds from that site go to St. Jude Children's Hospital. So please, check that out. We're really excited to launch that. We're so excited to have everybody involved in that. Oh, Larry, am I missing anything? We good?
Yeah, I think we did a great job. Thank you, Taylor. Thanks for everything
Thank you, Larry.
You guys do and keeping us out in front of everybody with social media. That's been a real blessing because now people are starting to know. People always 40 years, well, we've been around for 40 years. They say, well, we don't know. We don't know anything about you. Well, we haven't been hiding, right? We've been
Right.
trying to get out there. So,
Oh,
but
yes. We're
it just,
so we're so lucky to have the team that we have, and thank you for always giving us good content too. You are supplying a lot of great stuff for us too. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Happy anniversary week. Happy anniversary week, Larry.
cool.
Cheers.
Yes. Thank you,
Bye everyone.
everybody.
Thanks.
Have a great day.